Okay, we're going to go over the different circuits that are in the Quadrajet. And what I'm showing you to do here is why a lot of people fail on these rebuilds. Let's start out with the accelerator pump system. The accelerator pump, fits in here, pushes fuel down, and there's a passage all the way down here. Fuel comes up. There's that check ball I showed you before. Make sure you see it. Check ball lifts up, and these two passages here intersect this chamber. So then the fuel is going to come up, out here, and out here. Comes into your air horn right here, here, and here. Now there's a little, and it actually squirts the fuel across this void out here. It's actually spraying the fuel past the void straight out that hole. Both sides. A lot of problem is there's a very small hole when you go through this hole that's in here. This wire fits right in the hole and goes into that chamber. So the fuel is going to come up here, come out that very small hole, and squirt through this big hole. That hole, it gets gummed up. So you need to run wire and carburetor cleaner through these systems. Use the carburetor cleaner with a little straw on it, and you would start by putting it in this hole, spraying it, and you're going to want to see fuel coming into this chamber real good. Same way with this one. Spray fuel here, you'll see fuel coming into this chamber, carburetor cleaner, and you'll also see it coming out down here in the well. And you can take some little wires and also run it down. Like this one you can get all the way down. This one you can only go so far down because it does like a 90-degree bend. But you want to make sure that those chambers are there's no restriction in there. And then same way with here, squirt some carburetor cleaner in this hole, and definitely take a small wire and run it into that orifice on the other side and clean it. Otherwise you're going to have an erratic spray pattern, or you might not get any fuel coming out at all. The accelerator pump system is really good on these Quadrajets, and usually if you're having problems with the fuel squirting, you've got some restriction in there. The next failure people have when they're rebuilding them is this tube here, right there, these two. These are the tubes that are pulling fuel from this main fuel well. This is where your jets screw in, but there's fuel down this well, and it's going to pull fuel from the idle and off idle circuit through that tube. It comes across the top and goes down all the way through to the base plate, which is this hole here, right there. So at idle, you got vacuum, you're pulling fuel up. It actually comes through this little passage right here, transfers from one to the other, and goes down to the base plate. The base plate picks it up here, and goes down to the idle circuit here where your screw mixture comes through, and this is your transition port that'll bring you from idle to off idle until you get into the main system. These tubes will almost guarantee get plugged up because old fuel sitting in there, and I have a tube here I've removed, and you can see how small that orifice is in the end, because it fits down in like that. There's these little barrel sleeves that fit over them, and you tap all that stuff together, and then they drive them down into this casting. And so they're sitting down in there like this. Now, you could remove these. They're kind of difficult, and if you've never done it before, I tell people don't mess with them. Clean them in place. I've got a video, if you go on my channel, I show you how to remove these, but don't really get into it. The only reason I would remove these is if I wanted to modify the idle off idle circuit by enlarging this hole or making the hole smaller, then I would remove them. But other than that, the cleaning wires you want to use is, I buy this, I've got like 10 gauge stranded wire. Get at Home Depot, strip the casing back and peel one wire off. It seems like it comes out the perfect size for cleaning these tubes. You notice it goes right through there. So what you're going to want to do is take your carburetor cleaner and get it up against that orifice and spray it, and wear safety glasses, because you guys know that stuff will spray right in your eye, come back, and see what the fuel is coming out of here. Run some carburetor cleaner, take your wire, and you want that wire to go all the way down. You can see how deep I am. I bent it over, and see, I know I'm all the way in the bottom of the chamber. And you keep using some carb cleaner and this wire and keep kind of like scrubbing it. I should have another cup of coffee, get more shakes. Run the carburetor cleaner, just keep cleaning that thing. You know, same way on the other one. See, went through. And then, like I say, this is the one that feeds directly down to the base plate of the carb. This is a pretty big orifice. Doesn't usually have clogging problems. Where you run into the problems is this guy here. These two. These two are the culprit. And you won't be able to suck fuel up on your idle circuit and your off idle. Now they also use an air bleed. When it comes across from the main well, goes in down to the carburetor base plate. Over here there's an orifice, and what this is an air bleed. Okay, my camera shuts off every once in a while, so I gotta splice the videos together, but this is all low buck production. I'm using a little Nikon camera I got from my daughter. So, you know, the quality and so on. I'm just trying to get the point across. We left off on the air bleeds for the idle circuit, which I told you could come in here in the body of the carb. I'll run a wire up there. Anyways, that wire, mess around and get it in there. Goes up into that chamber. That's your down tube that goes to the base plate with your fuel for your idle off idle circuit. And what that does is it'll emulsify the fuel with air, because aerated fuel, you know, vaporizing will burn better than the solid fuel. You just got to check on your carburetor, because some manufacturers put the air bleed here in the body, and some of them put them in the air horn. Actually, that's what this dimple here is for, because they would drill this through. This one's sealed, and it would come out up in this area here. So just check that you got the right air horn for the carburetor. You can't have two of these air bleeds. You know, you can't have them in the air horn and the body. Otherwise you're going to be sucking too much air, and you're not going to get hardly any fuel flowing from here over to your down tube. So that's just something to check. Like I say, you got to go through all the orifices with a wire, carb cleaner. And the next one is the air bleeds for the secondary metering wells. You know, you run a wire down through them. Goes all the way through. Right out the top. Go all the way through to the top. Clean them. What these tubes do is they fit in to the secondary metering well. Fuel flows through here, comes out here into your this area right in here, which the main nozzles here are connected, and your fuel is going to spray down from those nozzles. These tubes are another emulsifier. They'll mix air with the fuel as it comes out here, and that's what they do. These other tubes on the carb are for an accelerator, you can call it not really pump system, but an accelerator fuel system. So when the throttle blades open up, your air horns start to open, it'll actually pick up fuel from the body and squirt it out these holes here. Right there. So you got to make sure it's clean. So it's actually like an accelerator pump. When those air valves open, the vacuum will pull fuel from these tubes right up through that hole. This is the well for that accelerator system on the secondaries. Those tubes fit in these wells. These wells fill up with fuel by this very small orifice. It takes a while for them to fill up with fuel. So you want to run a wire through there and make sure you can see it coming through the other side. Both of them. So when that air valve opens, pulls fuel out of the well through that accelerator system, and that well will actually run dry really quick because it takes a while for that well to fill back up with fuel because it's such a small orifice. Your metering rod, these are fixed secondary orifices, and the metering rod sits down in them like that when it's closed, like seals them off, and then as that arm rises up, it's going to pick them up out of that well and keep going and metering the fuel through the secondary nozzles. That's about it for the circuits. Now one more I'm going to tell you about. Down on the base plate, you see these brass bushings. Some of them even don't have the bushings, but this is your idle air bypass system. That's that port there. And what this does is, this is below the throttle blade. So throttle blade is almost completely closed. It'll pull air from, see now this one here does not have the circuit in it. Okay, so it has it in the base plate, but the air horn doesn't have a provision for it. I'm going to find an air horn so I can show you what this idle air bypass system does. Normally on most small block carburetors, this idle air bypass system is not needed. Where it really comes into play is on big block engines, 396 and larger, because in order to get enough air into the motor for it to idle, you got to open up the throttle blades quite a bit, and you wind up getting even past your transition port too far, and the the engine will actually start pulling fuel from your primary nozzles here. That's what they used to call it, the old Quadrajet nozzle drip. So what will happen is you'll be getting droplets of fuel falling down in the car because you have to open your throttle plate so far to get the car to idle. And you're going to get a real erratic idle that way. You know, it's like sitting there with an eyedropper dropping fuel on your blades. So what they came up with was an idle air bypass system, which if you look at this plate, it's all smooth ring around. This plate here has a notch in it. So what that does is allow air to come from here into this chamber here, through that hole, which comes out here, which corresponds to these holes here, which allow air to bleed below the throttle blades. So in theory, if you have this size hole correct for what you're doing, you can almost run the car with the blades completely closed, and get it to idle just by messing around with your air fuel mixture screws. You're still going to have the throttle blades will be just barely open, but you don't have to open up to the point where you start pulling fuel from the main nozzles. Like I say, you don't really run into a problem on that on small blocks. But if you guys are running a big block or a modified 350, or you're jetting it up, those 383 strokers and stuff, you're going to need more air at an idle. You're going to have that air idle bypass system in place in order for it to idle correctly. And I think that just about covers all the systems on the vehicle. I'll go over the piston and stuff, how we cleaned it up and how it operates in the wells when we start assembling it. But like I say, the biggest failure, if you guys clean all those orifices and everything is open and clean, and you have this carburetor jetted, specs to your motor, these things will work perfect, right out of the gate. A couple idle adjustments and fast idle adjustments, and you'll be cooking. Okay, here I got all my parts that are plated, dichromated. I've got everything laid out and kind of inventoried. I need plated. These throttle blades, they're aluminum, and I polish these. I mean, it's probably not necessary. I just like to do it. I polish all the rods. These are the primary rods, secondary rods, and I also, when I replate the power piston, I polish the surfaces that ride in the bore. The base plate's ready for assembly. I'm not going to redo this. I have a video just on these base plates, but it has bushings in it. We kind of left off on the different circuits in the system, and a couple of ones I forgot to mention in there was also in the body here. You see these holes down here. That corresponds to the down tube here. This one that goes down through the body to the idle circuit, and that's also another emulsifier for the fuel. It'll pull air into that hole and aerate the fuel some more. And also in the air horn, these bleeds here, you see them, some of them have a brass fitting, some of them are just a big hole, and that's a air bleed to emulsify the fuel for the main jet system which comes out the nozzle. You know, what they're trying to do is get that fuel kind of like, you know, an aerosol, rather than a, you know, big chug of fuel. And then also on some of these circuits, it also breaks any vacuum that once you like close the throttles back up. Another thing we do on these Quadrajets is we seal the secondary main wells and the primary, and also this one over here, which is for the accelerator pump. These are known to leak, seep a little, and that'll give you an erratic idle, rich mixture. Now this epoxy, I use JB Weld Marine epoxy because it's fuel proof. The quick set stuff is not fuel proof. I've tested these in fuel. You just got to make sure whatever epoxy you use, it'll be fuel proof, otherwise it'll just, if it starts leaking fuel, it'll just melt and run away. Like I say, I use the JB Weld Marine. I can pick that up at Ace or the auto parts stores. There's probably a lot of other epoxies out there, you know, two-part epoxies that are fuel proof, but that's just what I use, and it's easy to obtain. I've got all my screws in the bag. They've all been magnesium phosphate coated, and I've got my parts kit and the other parts behind me. What I'm going to do now is I'll get the base plate all assembled, and then we'll start the video again on building this thing up. Okay, we've put the base plate, I've assembled it all. Like I say, I have another video on this, so I wasn't going to go through all the you know, assembly and adjustments and so on. Just refer to that video, and it'll give you the skinny. We're going to get our parts out for the fast idle system and the choke pull off. Or choke unloader. You basically have those three pieces and the spring. These are basically three pieces. That's the fast idle screw and the spring. And this is the spring for the fast idle screw. We'll go ahead and get that started in here. Basically, the first part to go on is the unloader. That index is on that little bar. Now these all vary a little depending on the manufacturer, but the principle of them is all the same. That's your step for your fast idle, and that's your mechanism that controls the fast idle. It's mounted on the shaft like so. That's indexed to the shaft, and then we have our big screw and spring. Spring locks onto this arm down here. Let's get the screw going. We're just going to snug that screw up. The little spring lever comes up there like that. See it? Locks in. That gives it a springy action. The reason I hand tighten that, because I guarantee I'm going to be removing this assembly and adjusting these arms, bending them here for the unloader. Now we've taken the body, and I went through my gaskets, and I've checked the gasket. Sometimes they'll give you a couple different ones, that all these circuits match up. This one's here for your side vacuum. This one here is for the choke pull-off vacuum port. These are for your idle circuit and transition slot. This is your ported vacuum, and these would correspond to the I think this one over here too would correspond to the idle air bypass system if it was operational, but since our air horn doesn't have it in there, it'll be blocked off. So what we do is, like I say, the assembly is reverse order of how you put it together. Took it apart, put our base down, gaskets over the little ears. We drop the base on, get our Phillips head screws. There'll be 2 of them. These 2. I'll drop them in. Just want to kind of like, cross torque them good and snug. After I've torqued these and I've let them set for a while I'm putting the rest of the carburetor together, I'll go back and re-snug them up. So basically, we have our base plate mounted. Just camera here. See what's happening. Hey, another thing I found, maybe you guys would be interested. I was telling you about using those hollow ground screwdriver bits. I was over at Walmart and they had this one over by the gun section. It was a gunsmith set, and they've got all the nice hollow ground, small ones. It was $8, and they got a bunch of square drives and Allen heads and Torx for $8. I thought it was pretty good. So the first thing we'll do is we'll put our jets in. Now I've went over these jets. They're all marked. These are 67 jets. And the rods, the primary rods, are 42Bs. And I looked through my Rochester books, and this corresponds to it would probably be like a 70-40 202 or 203 carburetor, which is like 69 350 carb, 68 350 carb. It'll work on either year, even a 70. Like I say, make sure you got a screwdriver that fits those jets and just snug them up real good. Now before I plated these carburetors, I go in and I polish. My video cut off again, so like I say, we put the gasket in for the needle and seat, and I told you I checked those with a little hand vacuum pump. And see, this is like a screwdriver I've ground just to put those seat assemblies in, because you got such a wide mouth on it. And like I say, if you got too small of a screwdriver, you start chipping that edge up, and they'll start getting down into the system. You want to torque these pretty good so the gasket seals. So just to kind of show you where we're at right now. We got our jets installed. We got the accelerator pump ball in and the seat assembly. Okay, the next thing we can do is this is the accelerator pump they gave me with the kit. It's a complete assembly. These are pretty nice. It's got the garter spring in there to keep it expanded. A lot of kits just come with just this part here, which, you know, I've disassembled the original one and spring plated everything. And if I had to, I'd reuse this. This is in good shape. Okay, what I like to get assembled next, I like to get my choke pull-off fast idle system installed before I start messing with the float and stuff. This is the plate. This is the fast idle cam. Slides over like that. Make sure it's this arm. It's all resting on that arm, because this is the choke. When you pull it, it's going to raise that arm. It's going to put the fast idle in its position. This is your lockout I explained earlier. Make sure you put that on. And this is where the Chinese fire drill comes in. This is that little indexer that's going to fit on there. That's for goes to your choke plate, your rods for your choke plate. So that's going to fit down in this well here. So the way we do it is we just get this started in the hole. I hang it off the rod, goes like that. That's how your choke index. And what I do is I drop it in the well, and then I'll rotate I'm rotating that down so it indexes. It can get a little frustrating, you know, the first time you do it, but that's how we do it. Put our screw in. Locks the whole mess down, and then there's your action. So when your choke's hooked up to that, your choke coil will go into the manifold. It's pulling it closed, opens it up. It's also controlling the fast idle. And then you can see the unloader, like when we go to wide open throttle, see how it pushes that rod up? But that's going to have to come up more. I'll know more when I get the air horn on. And then this thing here, you just push it down and go turn it sideways, you disengage it. We'll put it on later after the air horn is installed. Our next step will be to the needle and seat. The needle and seat, or the needle, comes with this little hanger clip. You want to use this clip because this slips onto the float, and when the float goes all the way down, it will lift the needle off the seat. What can happen if you don't use that and the car was to sit for a period of time, fuel evaporated, this needle would go down to its seat, and I'll guarantee it'll glue itself with the fuel additives to the seat, and your fuel pump, only putting out between 4 and 6 pounds of pressure, is not strong enough to unseat it. So what that little piece of wire does is, when the float goes down, picks the needle up off the seat, and the fuel is evaporated, the needle's just hanging there, and it's not being glued in. So we have our new float. I'm going to drop the needle in without that wire because I'll be making some adjustments. I don't want to be fighting a little wire. We'll get our bar, and sometimes these bars, you can pull them apart just a little bit because the top is what pushes down on this and keeps it in its little holders. Sometimes they get a little crushed over the years. So what we'll do is we'll put that in. That drops in, and then we can just push down on our float. I can tell by looking at it. Now I've got this, the specs I've read on this is 1/4 of an inch down from the toe. This one's just a little bit high, and you're gonna bend it right here. I mean, it doesn't take much to change that. That's good. That's all there is to the adjustment. I'll go ahead and put my little clip on. I'll hang it off the float arm. Get my rod back through. Oh, there it goes. See, it's when it's down position, it's got that seat, that needle pulled off its seat.